the early morning of the 7th of the 7th of the 7th this year, about 1:35 a.m. My friend Paula and I arrived at the top of Nap Hill. And then around 3:13, I'm told from the timing on the tape that we all experienced a big white flash in the sky. At this point of the evening, about 3:20, it's the darkest point of the night, and as the sky was sort of really laden with clouds, there was absolutely nothing. It was a pitch black field, and there was nothing to be seen down below. But at about 20 to 4, some light was creeping in then from the east with the sun coming up, and we began to see a shadow, or what appeared to be shadows on the field. It was at this point when he looked through the camera that we all could see through the viewfinder that there was a massive, absolutely massive, spectacular formation down there below us.
You've been researching crop circles for what, 11 years now?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. In that time, we've seen the crop circle patterns changing. They started off with very kind of basic circular type shapes. The geometric shapes increased, then we started to get pictograms. What's happening now? What's the kind of current pattern?
The actual evolution continues as it has since 1978, which was the inception of the first major crop circles in southern England that were taken seriously. Since then, as you say, there has been a constant evolution.
On the evening of, it's the early morning of the 7th of the 7th of the 7th this year, about 1:35 a.m, my friend Paula and I arrived at the top of Nap Hill to begin an all-night vigil looking over Eastfield in the hope that a formation may appear. And then around 3:13, I'm told from the timing on the tape that we all experienced a big white flash in the sky, which very momentarily lit the whole sky up and the whole landscape, but it was very momentarily. At this point of the evening, about 3:20, it's the darkest point of the night, and as the sky was sort of really laden with clouds, there was absolutely nothing. It was a pitch black field, and there was nothing to be seen down below. But at about 20 to 4, some light was creeping in then from the east with the sun coming up, and we began to see a shadow, or what appeared to be shadows on the field. It was at this point when he looked through the camera that we all could see through the viewfinder that there was a massive, absolutely massive, spectacular formation down there below us.
This was the formation that occurred on the 7th of the 7th of 07 last year.
Yep.
From construction point of view, first of all, you've got to have at least on this construction 2 centres to work that particular geometry out. So you would expect to find somewhere around here post holes.
That certainly is the case. That this fine, what would be considered a construction line, was certainly laid down first in both of these major arcs. However, we went into this formation very early on the first day, on the 7th of July, and we actually managed to get into lots of these circles and pick up the crop and examine this fine line, and that was not crushed in this situation where it would have had to have been crushed rhythmically if this was made by people. Also, you know, the peripheries of all the main circles, you know, to define a circle you need to, you know, effectively create your, you know, your circle, your outer line, and typically on a hoaxed formation there would be heavy crushing to define a circle in a thin path, and then the rest would just be filled in. That was also not present in this formation. Also very, very noteworthy is the topography of the land inside this particular formation. Down this end, from around about here, sloping down to here, this was actually raising up like a large hill in the field. So this part of the formation was around about 3 to 4 meters higher than this part of the formation. So if you took a line from somewhere out here to create your arc, your semicircle effectively, it would have actually been almost a physical impossibility to do that, because your rope would have been on the ground about here, and you would have been dragging through the standing crop. So just a physical creation of that one arc would be extremely problematic. So on the whole, we were effectively looking for crushing around peripheral areas, central construction points, edges of circles, and like you said, post holes, stuff like that. And you would effectively go out into the field looking for areas within, you know, within your standing crop where people would have had to stand to create a wider image. In this particular case, none of the evidence that would suggest a hoax was present on the ground very early in the morning on the first day.
Some of these circles, it's very hard to see here when you get down to the actual, when you got down to the actual landscape. They're ever so tiny, aren't they?
Yeah.
The detail is amazing.
So what's extremely interesting about this, and it relates again to the actual topography of the land. This circle here was effectively on dead flat ground.
Right.
This circle here was on quite a heavy slope.
Yes.
And I measured both of these circles in cross section, and this circle, which was on heavily sloping ground, was elliptical, and it was elliptical by a large degree. We were talking like about 3 meters squashed in one side. This circle, which was on flat ground, was perfectly round. Now, if you go out and put a peg in the ground and fake a circle, it's going to be round, however steep the hill is. Everything about this formation suggested it came down. This circle looked circular from above, as did all of the ones on the slopes. Viewed from above, they're circular. Measured on the ground, they're elliptical.
Right.
Creating an ellipse on the ground physically, just draw an ellipse. It's very difficult to get it correct. Draw a circle, it's actually relatively easy. You know. So, and the same, I've measured many formations of a similar kind of nature over the years, most notably the Milk Hill 409 spiral from 2001. I spent an entire afternoon measuring one of the arms, one arm from the Milk Hill. It's kind of similar in effect to one of these, and that the position of that circle in the landscape, it was on a heavily undulating hilltop, you know, it's 1,000 foot wide. The whole formation, you could stand in any given part of it and just see bits
of it,
and when taking the time to measure one arm, literally I think there was around about 70 circles in each arm.
Wow.
Pretty much every circle which I personally measured in the same way, cross sections, every circle that was on the sloping ground was elliptical, every circle that was on flat ground was round.
As though it had either been stamped down or created to represent a circle when viewed from above.
Yeah. Final analyses of the original tapes taken by Wynne Keach shows this entire formation emerging in 8 minutes, and it's as if it scans into the field, so it's like a line goes across the field towards the hillside, towards the camera, and the whole thing just scans in, very subtle, very soft, no flashing lights, no Hollywood special effects, very simple, quite vague, almost boring, but there it is, it appears in 8 minutes. And you know, that would take 400 hoaxes 8 minutes to make that circle, and I didn't see him. I didn't see him in the film.
And they'd be quite noisy, wouldn't they? Something I believe happens when they say that it's not hoax, is that the lays tend to form patterns within themselves. You find the kind of spiral twists, you find the crisscross twists. There's a number of patterns in there, as well as kind of anomalous damage to the crop itself as well.
Sure. I would say there doesn't seem to be any one singular uniform method of crop laying down. Practically every single circle I've been in over the years, which is hundreds and hundreds of circles examined, most of the time the crop is kind of laid down differently, but we must remember we've got all different kinds of crop, and the age of the crop seems to make a difference. This was very mature-ish wheat, as opposed to very young barley. The effect on crop seems very, very different, depending on, as opposed to, say, oilseed rape or sweet corn. These are huge, thick plants, and it's an entirely different subject almost again. So one has to be very careful about looking at physical evidence and then using that as a uniform protocol for looking at the entire crop phenomena.
It's the original hoaxes as we know them, Doug and Dave. One of them's died, the other guy kind of actually admitted that it wasn't him anyway, didn't he? But since then, Team Satan, all these other kind of guys have dived in and said, yeah, we hoaxed every single one of those, we claim responsibility for those. When you're out in the field, literally as it were, out in these circles, out in these designs, what is it that stands out to you that suggests that maybe we're getting two things happening? We are getting hoaxing, but we're getting some kind of phenomenon as well. Is there a difference between circles, between designs, between the way they're laid?
There certainly is. I mean, on the ground, if you take a broad perspective that all the crop circles from any given year, from all over the world, there is a certain amount of different styles, if you will, in a sense, even varying from region to region or country to country slightly. We go into a crop circle on the ground, okay, first we need to be in it to get an honest, reasonable and realistic physical analysis on the ground. We need to be in there very quickly, because clearly once numbers of people or busloads of visitors or tourists have gone in, you don't know how many people have been there, what they have been doing and where they were walking for sure. So if you're looking at physical damage, you don't know if this is caused by visitors, by hoaxes from the night before. So it becomes fairly inconclusive at that point. So really one has to be there probably by 7, 8, 9 o'clock in the morning, especially in the busy part of the summer, to make a reasonable physical judgment. And at that time, if you get to the formations quickly, then yes, there are things to look for which would suggest it's a physical creation by some kind of mechanical device.
Such as?
Compression marks around the edges. In this formation here, for instance, we have like underlying all of these circles, a kind of a fine arc, like a straight line. You can just see it between. You can just see it between the circles. So for instance, if we go into this crops formation very early on the first day, we'd walk into all of the circles and you'd kind of effectively pick, the thin line has gone down and all the wheat has swelled down on top. What one would do is lift up the crop which is laid down on top, exposing this fine line, and if this has been made by any kind of physical mechanism, that fine line would have had to have been basically crushed down to the ground by planks or feet.
Right.
So we'd pick the crop up on top and see if the corn underneath is actually crushed in a kind of a rhythmic way, like foot paces. Incidentally, in this formation, it actually was not.
We're hitting into crop circles now, quite a few years later. It's not as though it's breaking news. It's not as though it's amazing stuff. Or is it? Is there something that's going on that makes crop circles still worth watching? Are we looking at a phenomenon that's unfolding before our eyes?
Okay. The evolution thus far has taken us to the point where we are receiving, almost on a daily basis in the summer months, huge, highly complex mathematical patterns of a real technical order. And at this time, 30 years down the line, the origins of the majority of those circles remains a complete mystery. So absolutely certainly is well worth looking at. And whilst the evidence is on the table, as it has been for 20 or so years at least, we're talking mathematical, biological and physical sciences which amount to evidence on the table, so suggesting without any doubt whatsoever that something strange and anomalous is happening to these plants inside the crop circles. That makes it well worth looking at. And the evolution is constant. They seem to be getting bigger and more impressive from a technical point of view year on year. And just this year, 2008, we've had more circles this year, this summer, in the last 8 weeks or so, than in any given summer from the previous 10 years. So something does seem to be kind of upping the ante, and the size and complexity of the circles. Sometimes we're having as many as 5 crop circles in one night. If you put this all down to human hoaxing, so there were 50 people out that night faking crop circles in the rain. You know, I mean, it stretches credibility. When we're looking at a new formation, obviously we're looking for the way the plants are bent, and they should be more or less even, just above the ground, and bent over neatly, all at the same height. The formations in oilseed rape are extremely interesting to look at. Any of the formations, oilseed rape or maize, sweet corn, any of the thick, hollow stem succulent plants, oilseed rape in particular, which the early season formations always occur in. Those stems, they're very, very brittle. You know, I've knocked those down myself just as an experiment, just the same as I have with wheat and barley and all types of crop. And it is an absolute fact that whenever I have tried to bend down armfuls of oilseed rape, it all breaks off. You know, it snaps off at the ground. There's a big, ugly kink or a break, and it's clearly mechanically pushed down. I've been inside crop formations in oilseed rape where every single stem has that perfect bend and the plant is growing horizontal and there's no damage. You know, there's just no damage. That to me is an impossibility. With regard to the actual physical science and the collecting of samples and sending them to Michigan, this is for BLT research, Dr. William Levingood. You know, I myself do this once or twice a year, occasionally, as requested, effectively. And what we effectively do is take, in any given circle, we'd probably take around about 50, we'd take a diagram of the actual crop circle into the formation with 10 points marked on this diagram, and effectively collect a handful of stems and a handful of dirt that goes with the stems, put it in a bag, mark it as sample number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and go around the whole formation. So you've got a kind of basically a cross section of the entire formation covered, and then we would go out into the field like 200 meters from the actual crop circle formation and take another 10 samples from randomly around the field, so as the control samples. And these would effectively be shipped off to North America, where they would do their science, which involved checking the soil composition for any changes, checking actual plants for cellular or tissue changes, the growth nodes for elongation or moisture depletion, and also they would actually remove the seeds and check them for do tests with
little knuckles or nodes, as they're called, and they're intensely brittle. Now you can bend the corn here, but all you're doing is snapping it. Right?
Yes.
But actually on these little nodes, you can't bend them because they'll just snap.
No, here's one that is just a normal one.
You try
like you say, you bend it like that,
breaks.
Straight away breaks it, doesn't it?
But this is like it's been, if you look closer, you can see little stretch marks. It looks like it's been heated and stretched. Now researchers that have done, you know, investigations on this have examined and found there's been a chemical change in the wheat. And that it appears to have been subjected to something like a microwave kind of energy, where it's heated from the inside out, but only enough to bend the node. It's obviously being very volatile, any more heat on it will just burn.
And it's kind of like an intense amount of heat, very, very, very short time as well, isn't it?
Definitely. So that's what I tend to go and look for.
Right. How many would you expect to find on a site like this?
Well, I'd expect to find loads.
Right. And the question has to be,
I mean, we found 2 already, just been here 5 minutes.
how many would you find outside? I mean, has there been a study done? Have there been studies done to prove that this is particular to crop patterns, crop circles?
There have been bent nodes found outside the crop,
Right.
particularly on the
Runways.
on the runways,
Yeah, tramways.
where the crop has been knocked down, perhaps by the tractor going through, and then the crop's sort of growing back up,
Right.
up towards the sunlight. But the difference with these type of ones is the chemical change in the weeds,
Right.
as opposed to. So there is a natural phenomena of this apparently.
Yeah. Okay.
But there are specific things about the ones you find in the crop that's just, it's only just been laid. It hasn't been there like for a while, and the crop's growing back up. These can be found in a crop that's only just gone down.
Over those 11 years, there's been like a number of like bizarre encounters, strange kind of encounters, effects on technologies, on myself, etc. First of all, with the technologies, cameras and electrical devices have regularly failed. I've gone into formations with a camera which has had a fully charged battery pack, and I've walked into a formation, switched it on, and the battery flattens like there, like literally in moments where you've got maybe 90 minutes of recording or photographing capacity in that battery. I've walked out of the formation and it's been fine, and I've walked back in and the battery is fed. There's obviously to me, it kind of suggested that there was some kind of residual electromagnetic field present, and that was interfacing with the devices. And this doesn't really happen all of the time. It seems quite random almost.
Right.
I haven't had any problems in crop circles with cameras for a couple of years at least. However, this year, for instance, I lent somebody my video camera to take into a formation, and exactly the same thing happened. My battery pack on that camera was failing for no apparent reason, but it did fail. I've actually had still cameras in formations where I've been trying to take pictures, and I'd switch the camera on, it would switch itself off, zoom would be coming in and out, it would just be doing its own thing, and it was like bizarre, really kind of like bizarre, kind of, you're just standing there with your camera thinking, what the hell is going on with this, So, and those, I've heard of, I've spoken to farmers who have told me about tractors breaking down in circles, when they've been harvesting the field, you've got this like £200,000 harvester that just breaks down inside the circle. That's a part of recorded history of the phenomena. And also physiological effects on the individual. Over those 11 years, obviously, after going in hundreds of circles, most of the time there's no real feeling of, one tries to do this in an objective, sensible way in an attempt to get to the basic facts, the truth of the matter, we don't need to cloud it with fluff and stuff. So one generally goes down there with an objective positioning, and looking for physical damage, looking for effects on the plants, looking for anything which might suggest people or physical devices had done it, or alternatively, if there isn't any of that, and to say this is exactly how the formation was. But during some of that research, that time in the circles, I often have experienced strange effects where I could feel like really bizarre tinglings running up my arms or legs, really almost like kind of like a real subtle cramp. This is something I cannot explain whilst in physical movement. Headaches, I never get headaches, in normal everyday life. I just do not get headaches. It's just
so you don't think that's because you're kind of thinking, well, this is a strange place, it's a bit weird, and you're kind of actually bringing it on yourself in any sense?
Probably not, because I would say not anyway, because one, again, a crop circle to me isn't a particularly weird place because I've been going into them for so long. It's kind of almost like going to Tesco's is weirder than going to a crop circle for me.
we react physiological to energy, whether it's electrical energy, whether it's radio, whether it's magnetic. As a physical being, we kind of do react to this. So it would certainly, you know, sit quite hand in hand that if you've got equipment like cameras, like tractors reacting, that you know, there's every sense that we're going to do the same, that if we're getting short-circuited on that level.
And there is a kind of suggestion, and it has been postulated quite a few times, that just the actual pattern being there, regardless of how it got there, whether it was aliens or interdimensionals or people with planks, with just the fact that there's a physical geometric shape in a canvas, if you will, which is, there's a disturbance effectively in the crop, that in some sense must create some kind of effect, you know, just because it's there. One has to consider all possibilities, all options at this time, because we really don't have many answers on the table. Every human should be inquisitive. When I first saw these crop circles, I was researching UFOs and hidden history and suppressed information, the same as we all kind of do to a degree or another. And you know, even though I was living, this is 11 years ago, I was living down in Devon, this is 130 miles away, pretty close, but I was largely unaware of this because the media never deal with it, you know, in any kind of serious or objective way. So I was largely unaware of it. I had seen the small circles on the TV when I was a child. I was kind of mystified, as a child would be, but and that was that. However, in '96, I bought this, you know, UFO magazine or someone type or another, and there was a spread in this magazine of that year's crop circles, and it was the circles from 1996. There was a fractal spiral at Stonehenge, and a similar 3-arm fractal spiral and I saw these and thought, right, okay, I've got a logical brain and I'm kind of reasonably educated. That's impossible. How can you got the A303 in Stonehenge there with its 24-hour guard, and you've got a 900-foot pattern there, which is that's a highly technical piece, you know. To create the fractal spiral, one needs to create large rectangular boxes to generate the actual curve, meaning a massive construction area. That construction area clearly wasn't there in the field. The whole pattern that looked singular and perfect by itself right next to Stonehenge, that required an inquisitive person to check it out, you know, just as a matter of course. And if one could happily conclude that was hoaxed or very cleverly done by people, then that would have been the end of my crop circle story. But the evidence, when we looked at the capabilities of Doug and Dave or whoever, relative to the fractal geometry which was happening, there was clearly a massive gulf between what was there on the ground and what these people were claiming.
Well, when they first came out of the closet, as it were, they were claiming that they got a couple of planks with some ropes and a ping pong ball hanging on the front of their hat. And they're doing this all in dark, creating these, and it was literally the time the patterns had started changing, wasn't it? We'd had the circles, we'd had some of the insectograms, and all of a sudden things got complicated.
The whole phenomena seemed to kind of mushroom, and all of a sudden we were getting these massive expressive patterns incorporating very ancient symbolism, very deep, meaningful things to indigenous persons from all over the world. It seemed as if the system, the media, the government, somebody, they've got to get a lid on this, because people are really starting to pay attention. When the first major, very large pictogram formation happened down at Alton Barnes Eastfield, just where this new formations happened actually, there were thousands and thousands of people down there, because it got some pretty heady media attention in the early days. They didn't all of a sudden jump on, it's got to be a hoax because we don't understand it, therefore it must be a hoax. There wasn't any of that at that time, and thousands and thousands, and it looked like the whole thing was going to blow up and get serious international attention, and something or someone or some element of the system clearly didn't like that. And all of a sudden, what a surprise, Doug and Dave were produced, knocked down a couple of highly mediocre circles for the TV cameras, and it was actually embarrassing what they'd done. But it was enough. It created an impression pretty much in the international consciousness, and that went around the world in a week. You know, there are things that happen on this planet which are truly amazing, which never make it into the media.
meet a lot of people kind of coming to these places. Some people seem to be drawn for the spirituality, if you like, the experience of a space that has been created out of a natural product. Other people are drawn by the kind of wackiness of it, and other people drawn by the science of it, the what's going on here kind of thing.
All of those aspects interest me, actually. So having, worked for so long in this field as a psychic artist, I'm aware that there are beings that exist in other dimensions.
A lot of people talk about channeling. We talk about it with respect to where we get our music from,
Right.
where people get their books from, where people get their art from.
Yeah.
And it seems that we kind of draw on maybe the universe, maybe the world, maybe nature. Something comes in and out. Is maybe something similar happening here, that there is a kind of, I don't know, nature at work, a force at work, something like that?
I think that's very likely. I mean, the Earth itself is a living, conscious being. It could be the Earth choosing to communicate with us in a way that we would relate to. I mean, personally, I'm open to all the possibilities, because as I'm aware that there are these other dimensions of reality, which quantum physicists now also acknowledge. We use the word spirit world, but they might use the term a multi-dimensional universe, interdimensional levels of being, and therefore, to me, it's quite feasible that there are beings that operate in those other dimensions, and that we communicate with them on a conscious-to-consciousness level, and using a picture or a pictorial image is a bit similar to, like, the idea of the yantra that the Indians use to meditate on?
Yeah.
It's a specific shape, it's geometric,
Yes.
and it tunes you into universal consciousness. And I really feel that that's a very large part of what some of these images are, even if you don't understand it from a scientific perspective, just by seeing the image. And
Picture speaks 1,000 words.
it communicates you on an intuitive level.
Absolutely.
And you get what you get from it. Someone else might get something else. There is this multi-dimensional, aspect to them, and that's what draws me. I like the whole concept of all those ideas.
Back in 1999, down at Milk Hill, White Horse, just near Alton Barnes, there was a formation in oilseed rape, and I decided to spend the night in that formation, the night after it actually occurred, it arrived. And at the time I was here with my partner and a friend of ours, so those two decided to spend their night right on the Milk Hill White Horse. Around about between 11:30 and 12, something seemed to descend over the circle. I could not hear the cars on the road, the farmer vehicles, but it was really odd. And about a minute or so after this whole kind of effect took place, this large orb of light, about the size of a beach ball, it was pretty big, like just appeared right there, right in front of me, inside the circle. It was kind of lit from the inside, lighting up the ground around it and the stems, and it was just hanging there above the ground. That stayed in place for about 1 minute, and then it just faded out to nothing over the course of a few seconds. And then the following morning, my partner comes into the formation with our friend, and before I say anything, she said that we saw from our position up on the White Horse an orb of light come streaking across the field, across the top of the crop, which was 6 feet high, and dip down into the crop circle where you were. If you're a farmer and you go to the police about a crop circle, they'll record it as criminal damage, end of story. And which is very curious, because again, the evidence just does not fit the criminal damage theory. And when you kind of take tentatively all of these pieces and put them together, including a kind of what seems to be a kind of interest from some element of the system, the government, the authorities, there's something else going on here. Even if
a multitude worth of mechanisms, or that there isn't an answer yet that will explain all of these different angles.
After 10 years of research, 10 years of intimately looking at the circles, looking at the maths, the physics, the science, the evidence in general. There is no kind of litmus test that is saying this is a genuine crop circle and that's not. You know, it's nowhere near as simple as that at all. The best one can really, 11 years later I got more questions than answers. I thought it was going to be very simple. I thought I'd come over here to Wiltshire, I'd have a look at a circle or two, I'd find out it was man-made or it was something else, and that would be that, and I'd go back home to Devon and I would do my thing. Instead, I came here, I stayed here, and I'm still here 11 years later, amongst other things, but still trying to figure this out. How could this be possible? Inside this formation, we clearly have a physical construction method that makes sense to our basic logic, but the evidence on the ground suggests that this is not a physical construction because there's no physical construction traces, and with the video footage and the surrounding events of that night with this particular formation, the idea of human construction is effectively impossible, even though people have claimed to have made this formation as they claim to make effectively all the formations. The day after this formation emerged, a group of people who live in that particular area come forward and said, yes, we made that. We started at 10:30 in the evening. We finished it at 4 o'clock in the morning. And I could go out and I could claim that I've started
Absolutely.
this. Anybody could. So a claim in itself is nowhere near good enough. We used to go and spend a lot of nights in crop circles and just leave. And there was one particular crop circle, I can't remember what year, I think it was 1997.
Yeah.
And we all went to sleep at 1 o'clock in the morning, even the dog, which was unusual because normally it'd be pacing around chasing rabbits and doing its thing. We woke up at 6 o'clock the next morning and there was a formation 400 feet long in the field right next to us.
The dog hadn't noticed.
No, we didn't, the dog didn't, and it's really, I could possibly imagine that we could have slept through something going on next to us, but the dog, no way. We are so heavily conditioned, from the moment we're born, basically, we're conditioned to believe in very particular, narrow ways what's right, what's wrong, what's real and what's unreal, and so I guess the animals, they don't have the cultural conditioning to a degree that we do, and that's why
we're conditioned to block it out as well because it becomes useless for us within this fast-paced world. Within the world of Tesco's, Morrison's, getting to work and back in 7 hours. Too much information.
It's kind of, in a sense, you can kind of understand that many people may not want to accept the reality that something's going on here, because ultimately it would need a reappraisal of just about everything we've ever learned. But this isn't happening for no good reason, and when you look at the implications of some of the designs, very, very ancient designs which relate directly to the state of human consciousness at this time on our planet, it could be something really important happening here, and it's being largely marginalised or ignored just because people are either in the media or either too lazy or too scared or too controlled, I don't know what.